Are we all right?
30 seconds to air. Okay. 30 seconds.
Quiet, please. Let me think, will you?
Coming out on camera.
RG, give me some quiet. I've got to think.
We've got Farris. You want the free fade of Farris?
No.
No. 15 seconds to air. Punch.
Good morning. It's going to be a busy morning this morning. And first off the top, I have a little bulletin for you on the future of John Farris, the former Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal of British Columbia, who is now in England on holiday after the incredible affair which saw him flee from his top job in British Columbia on the bench. And the little bulletin is that an application has been submitted to the Law Society of British Columbia by Mr. Farris, so that if accepted, he may practice law again in British Columbia. The application is in the hands of the Credentials Committee of the Law Society, and after it passes through that, it will be considered by the benchers of the Law Society for admission or rejection, probably at the meeting on the 26th of January in Vancouver. Just got to keep you up to date on any nuances and aspects of the judges' positions in British Columbia and the ex-judges. Now we come to the big stuff this morning. Bill Bennett pulled off a biggie yesterday. Now what is it? Political ploy? Is it some kind of bribery with your own money? Is it real? Is it something you can cash? At the press conference yesterday, Mr. Bennett was in fine form. Anybody was there. That was the grey eminence, Dan Campbell, I was talking to. And Mr. Bennett built up his offer by going back, as he always does, into the grassroots philosophies, beliefs, and memberships of the Social Credit Party. But we'll get down to the details and let you know what it means after this break.
The announcement I'm about to make today provides more personal satisfaction for me as an individual than perhaps anything we've done since we became government a short 3 years ago. Because what we're announcing today really reflects the commitment and the philosophy of the British Columbia Social Credit Party. But more than just the British Columbia Social Credit Party, it meets our commitments that go back to the roots of the party that was founded in the Depression, out of despair by people in Western Canada, people who were pioneers, who were hard of hand and strong of heart, but could do nothing to end the misery of the Depression. And so they banded together because they felt that as individuals they should share in the wealth and prosperity of their province and their country. And certainly we all know we have great potential wealth and prosperity in our country.
We were all on the edges of our seat by this time. We knew, of course, it wasn't an election. We knew it wasn't connected with Macmillan Bloedel. We were beginning to smell that it was the BC Resources Corporation, as Charlie Barber had talked about the other day.
Today I'm announcing the manner in which the British Columbia Resources Investment Corporation will be given to the people of British Columbia. Because it is the intention of this government to give to every eligible British Columbian, and there are rules for eligibility, 5 free shares of the BC Resources Investment Corporation. We estimate that if every eligible British Columbian seizes this opportunity, this company could have 2,400,000 shareholders, which would make it the most broadly based shareholding company in all of Canada, when one of the largest companies in number of shareholders, not only in the Americas, but in the British Commonwealth. In addition to gifting the 5 shares to each British Columbian, the province would give them the company, BCRIC, at the same time that the province is giving the shares, would make available for purchase up to an additional 5,000 shares for each individual who qualifies. Ownership is restricted to, in those cases, a maximum of 1% of the shares, and the restriction on purchase of the shares by legislation, and that legislation is to Canadian citizens only, so this company, these shares can never be taken away from the Canadian people, and hopefully British Columbians will always dominate the ownership and the affairs in their own province. In this last year, BC Resources has earned about $9 million, so at book value, they're worth about $160 million at book value. The underlying value, though, if you took also, besides earnings, the appreciation in some of the areas of shares that trade on the market, the underlying value could be $179 million. I think we'd get lost if we concentrated on the numbers, because the value will be that this dividend to the people is a dividend that will keep on giving if they maintain their ownership, which I would encourage them to do.
Can they sell them?
Yes, you can buy and sell. It will be, after it's called for trading, it will be on the stock market and people can buy and sell their shares. Now, we're, in the first instance then, we're distributing, making available to the people who apply, they have to apply, 80% of these shares. The government will own in the first instance about 20%. That means that if you took the book value of $160 million, it'd be worth about $10 a share. If you took the underlying value, which is current market, it could be about $12 a share. I want to say that the issue of additional shares, which only these people will have available for purchase, of course will be, that money will go directly into the treasury of BCRIC, in which, so it can undertake new developments and new projects. Those shares will be sold, although I don't have the price today because it will have to be done by the directors before the early March date, at a substantial discount to book value to let the people of BC in on the ground floor.
You see, what Mr. Bennett is doing, and it may well be a master political plan and something in your hands as well, is that he's taken the assets of the BC Resources Investment Corporation, which gathered together the Crown-owned lands. I'll give you the details of these lands in a moment. And it also took the NDP purchase of 80-odd% shares of Cancel, Kootenay Forest Products and Plateau. And they are owned with asset values of a minimum of $150 million by BCRIC. So Bennett, not costing him any money, is making a transfer of these assets into shares. 15 million shares. 3 million will be kept by the government. That's 20%. And the other 12 million are going to be divvied up to every single resident of any age in British Columbia who has been here a year, who is a Canadian citizen, or is prepared, if they're old British subjects from Victoria, to apply for Canadian citizenship. Now, you're out of luck if you don't qualify by June the 15th, 1979. And of course, you can bet this will be an efficient government operation which will slap the shares out to everybody who asks for them. And the breakdown liquidated value, which is what he was talking about there isn't any doubt about it. If you sold everything that's in BCRIC now on a half reasonable market, you'd get $10 to $12 a share. 5 shares for free. Now just let's look at what are the BCRIC BRIC assets. 2.3 million acres of oil and gas exploration rights. They're Crown-owned. 2 pulp mills, the 5 sawmills, the plywood plant. That's Kootenay Forest Products, Plateau, Cancel, and a pipeline system. So that means, just to repeat it in more technical detail, that BC residents will share in 2.3 million acres of oil and gas exploration rights, 81.3 of Cancel, because part of that is still privately held other than by the government, and as I say, Kootenay Forest Products, Plateau Mills, and the shareholdings of BCRIC at West Coast Transmission. Now, I had a chance to chat with Bennett a little later on. Now, I'm not telling you right now this is the greatest bonanza since the Garden of Eden. But I'm not telling you either that it's not something that the public doesn't want, because before the reports had finished on the news hour last night, the phones down here were ringing, people saying, where do I get my shares? How do I get my shares? when you get your shares, if you apply for the shares, you can't just go straight out and flog them for a bottle of rye. You're going to have to wait until it's on the market. There's no prospectus being issued for this because it's a government operation, but at some stage it will have to satisfy another government department that it's a suitable matter for trading on the stock exchange. He insists it's going to be a section, this BCRIC operation will be a section of the private, what do you call it, the free enterprise factor in British Columbia, and that at some stage in the future they'll be traded in the market, and if you want you can sell your shares or you can buy them, but if you buy them you must be a Canadian citizen and you can't hold more than 1% of the stock. It seems an awful lot of shares. But let's see what Premier Bennett has to say to me and some other aspects of this after that press conference yesterday. The Bennett interview. What's my first question? Nobody knows.
When do you want the Bennett interview? Straight off the top?
Not straight off the top.
Not straight off the top.
I'm going to set it up first.
He'll set it up.
How much time do I want to set it up? I can't remember what my first question was. Oh, social credit dividend. Okay, I'll take about 30 seconds.
It'll take about 30 seconds before we get.
Better go over a couple of the basic facts again, right? You got to apply for these shares by June the 15th. If you don't, you're out of luck. The shares will be distributed as of British Columbia Day, August the 6th, 1979. I always thought that was a social credit birthday, but maybe that's August the 10th or August the 1st. Now, I had a chat with Bennett up in the Robson Square, kind of informal chat, just to see what he could add to it, while my little silly brain is trying to work out the nuances of this fantastic apparent offer. You know how cynical we tend to be, Mr. Bennett. I was just waiting for you to say today, here is a social credit dividend. Why didn't you say that?
Well, the thought never occurred to me, although sharing the wealth or letting the people participate in the wealth is a basic commitment of social credit, who had its roots in the Depression, as I said, and the people turned and developed this party. It's evolved over the years, and now we are uniquely a British Columbia party, and we try and find modern solutions to modern problems. But you know, that basic commitment to the individual and ownership and opportunity is still with us. And you know, it's the thing that brought me into politics.
Now, let me make sure I've got this right, Mr. Premier. It's $170 million in assets, 15 million shares, 12 million out to the resident qualified people in BC. Can you pin it down to a value per share?
First of all, the government transferred assets, and you've got the list of what those assets are, to the BC Resources Investment Corporation when we set it up. Those assets, first amongst them, 2.3 million acres of exploration of oil and gas lands in northern BC.
And where did you get them?
The people, they were in the inventory of government land. The government owns 95%.
You mean in Crown land?
Yeah, Crown land, and these rights were transferred. Normally, we would auction them off. Now, we have taken they owed us $151 million for all of this. We've taken that $151 million in 15 million shares, of which we're going to give, so the company has no debt for that. Now we're going to give make those 12 million shares available free in 5 share lots to the people of BC, babies born up to June 15th, people of Canadian citizenship who have resided here during the last year or more. It could be as many as 2,400,000 people.
So you're telling me that if a baby is born not June 15th, but June 16th, no share, out in the cold?
That's right. Always you arbitrarily have to have a date, but you know, for people who, because of the eligibility requirement, and there's always gray areas, there's an appeal procedure beyond June 15th for, I'm not sure if it's 90 days, to the Minister of Finance on eligibility. And believe me, we're not out to restrict people. We want to have as wide an opportunity within the reasonable qualifications.
All right, now just from the layman's point of view, here we've got basically right now a value, real value of $151 million it cost you, our government,
Yeah,
right?
It's worth 160 at book value today because the company earned $9 million last year.
And there's 15 million shares. 3 million you're going to keep for the government, is that right?
For now.
For now. Okay. Having got my 5 free shares, I can, prior to some public time, buy more shares, up to 5,000.
With the same June 15th deadline, you can buy Only the people that qualify. Nobody else, for the free shares, can buy up to 5,000 additional shares, and they'll be at a substantial discount, I'm informed, from the book value or underlying value of those shares.
Who'll decide that value?
The BC Resources Investment Corporation directors, on advice from their financial consultants in the investment community. Now, this means that every British Columbian, for the first time, Jack, is in on the ground floor. You know, I can't say that so many times you've heard that somebody made a killing and he was an insider, or we all hear people say, I wish I bought IBM shares at $5. I've got to tell you, now everybody has a chance to be in on the ground.
You're telling me if we hit a Leduc and the natural gas and oil leases up there, that the shares will hit the roof?
If you hit a Leduc, you'd be rich two ways. Your shares would be worth more money, and your province's economy would expand so you can't lose. You'd be a winner as a citizen, you'd be a winner as a shareholder.
So it's going to be a public corporation, shares trading on the market eventually, but no prospectus, eh?
If you talk to Helliwell and the rest, you'll find that when it's called for trading, it will function under all the rules and the same conditions as any other private company. It'll get no special privileges from government, but what it will have is what British Columbia does have, unlimited opportunity.
Why do I think it's just too good to be true?
Well, there's so many people today, the reason the country's in trouble, I guess, and many things, is they can't look beyond old ideas and they can't look beyond the tip of their nose. You've got to look at new ways to get the people involved and to give them opportunity. You know, I'm never going to be bound by traditional solutions, just as I could never be bound by a rigid socialist doctrine that says the only answer is in big government ownership. My experience with government shows me that that's the worst possible thing that could happen.
By the time this was on the air, Davy Barrett will have said, one, if there are any assets, it's thanks to the NDP. We bought Cancel for $1 plus the $70 million in debts. It's a great money maker, and so therefore if it wins, it's because of them.
No, I would probably think, if you're asking me, the sexiest asset to me is the oil and gas lands. That's the sex appeal. The others are very substantial companies, and the ownership is there. Cancel isn't for sale. Actually, the government will have a continuing obligation of guaranteeing Cancel debts until such a time as that those...
Not the shareholders, the government.
Yeah, because that was made when the government took it over, that those guarantees...
It won't be the shareholders who'll have that on the back. They get $160, $170 million
they got in, and we
assets
still
in there.
carry the guarantee.
You still carry the guarantee.
Yep.
Can it flop? Supposing there are only 500,000 people out there, 2,400 potential buy the shares. Can it flop?
I don't see how, with the board of directors we set up to get it going, prominent British Columbians with a success history in this province, Chunky Woodward's, John Pitt of Okanagan Helicopters, British Columbia companies that have, you know, become famous in the world, gone around the world. Jack Poole of Dayon and others whose roots are in British Columbia and their commitments here, they're not going to let it fail. Those people are young, aggressive British Columbians with a great future for themselves and their children.
Section 11, back to work in the Kootenays, freeze on municipal taxes, partial freeze on school rates. Now this thing, does this mean no election before June the 15th?
No, it's just continuing. The government is called upon to provide, not only react to situations and not only administer government, but to provide leadership. Been elected to lead, and I'm going to lead. These are times when we have no other choice. We've got to either step out ahead or fall by the wayside.
You certainly are, so, and we've known each other a few years now, master at not answering the odd question.
Jack,
by the way,
still a master of asking the tough ones.
Listen, are we okay in here? Is the roof all right?
I understand that there's no leaks in here.
Thank
no
you.
leaks in the Premier's office.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. That was a good crack he meant. They said no leaks in the Premier's office. We were, of course, in the Robson Square complex. Remember where the roof was going to fall down? And where they stopped the waterfall? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that and take some. I can probably answer some general information questions on it. It really is an incredible proposition. I haven't quite made up my mind on it yet, but it looks like a master stroke of some kind or another. We'll see. We'll get down to business. I'll take some phone calls too. I have a little bit more business I want to give you after this break. One of the wealthy cameramen here was, the guys on the floor, was asking when you could buy the extra shares. The share sale at the discount price for anything more than the free shares is restricted to eligible residents who have applied for free shares. Might as well, my interpretation, and I'm quite clear on this, is you get your 5 free shares. You can then apply for up to 5,000, or whatever the market price, but Bennett says that's going to be, these up to 5,000 are going to be sold at a discount. Later on when it's on the market, you'll be able to sell your shares on the market or buy them on the market, presumably, for the going price. I hope we made some of the aspects of it reasonably clear. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster, I wonder whether anybody has considered the cost of servicing over 2 million shareholders. The annual reports probably cost $1 to print.
How many shareholders will go to the annual meeting?
The proxy mailings out, the postage alone would cost.
Well, that'll come out of the BCRIC anyway. That won't...
Yeah, but they're not going to make that much money.
Well, he says they made $9 million last year in cancer. What they're looking for is the appreciation in the natural gas and oil rates.
It costs more than $3 to service a shareholder.
$3?
At least, yeah.
500 times $3 is $1.5 million. Well, I don't know that, but...
Time a share is traded, it's got to be re-registered, eh?
What do you think of it, by and large?
It's going to be a terrible cost.
What do you think of the proposition, by and large? You sound reasonably intelligent.
I am just shocked. I'm a social credit supporter, but I sure think this is a stupid idea.
You don't like it. Thank you. Fair enough. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I was wondering about the Canadian citizenship aspect. Like, I'm a Canadian citizen, but my father came from Britain in 1926, but he didn't take out Canadian citizenship papers. So
he is a Canadian citizen. He's just got to prove it. It's quite clear that you got to be a Canadian citizen, not a landed immigrant or alien resident who is prepared to go and apply for Canadian citizenship before you get your 5 free shares.
Oh, I see.
So it's as clear as a bell on that.
Yeah, well,
but you've got to be born before June the 15th, 1979 to qualify. If you're born June the 16th, when you grow up, you can only buy them on the open market.
I don't know if this is an election ploy or not by Mr. Bennett.
It's partly an election ploy, no doubt about that. But it depends how it's accepted. I should imagine there'll be a broad... At the very worst, it's a lottery ticket you're getting for nothing. At the very best, it's an investment that might be worth a lot of money. Go ahead, please.
Yes, nobody has said yet where and when to apply. I assume that'll be coming out somehow in the media.
Credit unions, trust companies, banks, applications will be available in early investment dealers, anywhere in BC in early March.
That's good. Are we going to be able to, as shareholders, have an influence on this company, or is it just because the way
you do not have to be a director of BC Resources Investment Corporation. You do not have to be a shareholder to become a director.
Yeah.
The government can only appoint, the government presently appointed the directors. When it has less than 10% holdings, it will have no automatic appointment of directors, I think. Any shareholder can be a director.
So we're not going to have general shareholder meetings?
Yes, you will.
It'll be a lot of fun to have all of those into one room.
How many go to union meetings? How many go to shareholder meetings?
Well, this has sure made me vote NDP this next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Top of the morning to you, Jack. This is Mr. Mitchell calling. I was just wondering a really quick question. In the words of wee Davy, is the social credit government going to set up anything in the way of like auto plan where they had a purchase plan for shares?
Nobody asked them that question yesterday. No, I do not think so, because the 5 shares are free. The other you would have to finance in the normal manner through your finance house.
Oh, so there's...
No, there's no installment buying for up to 5,000. Matter of fact, supposing the shares go on the market not at $10 or $12, but even, we'll say at $8 or $6. 5,000 times 6 would cost you $30,000 to have your maximum holding.
So there wouldn't be anything set up for the little people then?
Sure there is. You can buy 100 shares at whatever the price is. I don't know what the price will be. Oh, no. He said, to be quite accurate about this, that when the shares are offered to those who have applied for the free shares, they will be put on the market at a substantial discount. Now, I don't know how you value shares. I know that share value reflects the earnings and the profit potential of a company.
Right.
Supposing they go on, they will presumably have to meet the normal commercial standards, even although they're not issuing a prospectus on it. They'll have to qualify to go on the stock exchanges. And supposing it was $6.
Well, the minimum, though, that as far as I understand, on the stock market, the minimum shares that you can buy is 100. That's what they call a block, is it not?
Should have asked that question, shouldn't I?
So 100 shares.
100 shares by 10 would be 1,000, or 100 shares by 6 would be 600.
That's right, yeah. So
That's something. Matter of fact, I will have David Halliwell of the BC Resources Investment Corporation on the air on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. precisely,
Right.
and I'll get that answer specifically. We'll have to roll around for a few days before we get into all the nuances.
Yeah, because you know, for a person in a low income, $1,000 isn't the easiest thing in the world to come by, even if you want to jump in, like you say, on the ground floor.
Agreed, but obviously Bennett is a free enterprise that is committed to those that have a buck and want to invest to let them invest.
Yeah.
This is restricted, however, as you know,
Yeah,
to Canadian
citizens. Yeah.
That's the free ones are Canadian citizens eligible as residents in British Columbia. The other ones can only be purchased by Canadian citizens, and nobody can hold more than 1%.
Right, right. Okay,
Much
thank you
obliged.
very much, Mr. Webster.
Certainly a big story, I'll tell you that, no matter how you look at it. Go ahead, please.
Fine. I would have appreciated a little more of a tangible vote getter with regard to this offer. What I don't understand is, well, I understand why he did this, but I would have appreciated more is him dumping these shares on the open market to offset the cost of my ICBC payments every year.
In other words, you'd rather he sold them to the public and put it against the ICBC costs.
I would have appreciated it. Would have done me a hell of a lot more good than just receiving 5 free shares of questionable value at a later date.
Alec MacDonald said on the news this morning that he was going to paper his washroom with them. I don't think that's very clever.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you anyway. Yes, yes. Hello there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Webster.
Mm-hmm.
Eh?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Good morning to you.
Yeah.
This idea of selling shares in the BC Development Corporation, I thought that the people of BC already owned that.
As a matter of fact, the people of BC already do own that. They own it as part of their crown assets.
We bought the sawmill.
No, they bought it. Barrett paid $1 plus taking over the $70 million debts in Cancel.
Sure.
I don't know. I think the 2.3 million acres were acquired as of natural rights. They belong to the Crown in any case. He
Well,
also
that's it.
bought Kootenay and whatnot. Bennett announced he wanted to get rid of them, so he's,
With their own money?
yes, they're being offered their own money back, those who care to apply for them or buy part of it back from the government.
I think this is quite an election gimmick, isn't it?
It certainly is. I'll go that much. Hold on, please. Go ahead, please.
Yes, would you be able to give us the names of the present directors, if possible, or are there any?
Yes, 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 yes.
Before you go off the air.
I'll give you it right now. Trevor Pilley, Bank of BC. Joe Pitts, Okanagan Helicopters. Jack Poole, Dayon Development. Charlie Chunky Woodward. He's not from Simpsons here, he's from Woodward's. Morris Young, Finning Tractor. And David Halliwell, President and Chief Executive Officer. Webster. Bit early to get into all the technical foo-for-all about this and that and the next thing. What I'd like in this section is a simple opinion. Is it a good idea from your point of view, or is it a bad idea? Try not to be outright political, you know. From Burton, which is near the cusp. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I think it's a really good idea, but I'm fairly disappointed. We've lived here for 4 years now. We're landed immigrants. And, you know, we're buying our home. We intend to stay. But we don't yet qualify to apply for citizenship. You know, I mean, it's like we can't vote either. So as an election thing, it works pretty well for him.
Or you can vote. Don't kid yourself. Oh, no, you're not Canadian citizens yet.
No, but we certainly have been residents here for 4 years.
Every person who is a Canadian citizen or has qualified and applied for citizenship. You are here, you have not qualified, you have not applied for citizenship, you are out.
That's right. That's right, but we pay taxes in British Columbia. We live here. We intend to stay here. We're buying a home. You know, I mean, we...
Yeah, I must take that up.
Here for 4 years.
There is a form of appeal, but nobody mentioned that to him yesterday, and I didn't think of asking it myself. Ma'am, I'll look into that for you.
He'd quit saying every British Columbian, then.
Every Canadian citizen resident of British Columbia and those qualified and applying for citizenship.
Yeah, but he keeps saying all British Columbians can own a part of, their.
You think it's a good idea and you want your share, and I'll ask David Helliwell about that Tuesday morning for you, love, or maybe before. Thank you. Osoyas.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
I think it's a terrific idea, and I think whether it's a political ploy or not, these are the kind of politicians we need, somebody that can make us feel positive about BC, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it certainly has that aspect, ma'am. I must be the first to admit. It seems to have real assets behind it of some kind, even though they were bought and controlled by the Crown, they're now being put out in social credit free enterprise philosophy.
And even if anybody doesn't have any cash, they can think that they're part of some of the action just by holding on to their shares.
They own 5 shares.
Right.
How's the weather in Osoyas this morning?
Lots of snow.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
You like it or not?
Is that me, Jack?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty well opposed to the thing. I'm thinking I already own the assets that are there.
That's correct, but you don't have any...
Canada and having lived in British Columbia all my life, I certainly don't like the stand he has taken regards newborn people and people that are not 16. They're going to be written out of the heritage.
No. Men, women, and children. Those 16 and over apply directly in their own name. Babies get it. Application is made by the mother or guardian, and the shares are held by the same.
What about the people?
Children under 1 year are eligible if they were born in BC and have resided here since birth. Now, that's as clear as a bell, sir. Go ahead, please.
It's intriguing, but I would like to know where if someone buys you quote the number of $10 to $12 per share based on the number of people in BC and the assets.
That's the breakdown if you liquidated the whole thing.
If somebody buys 3,000 more, this automatically would reduce the value, wouldn't it?
No, that would go into the, well, I don't know, but what happens to that money is it goes into the treasury of the BCRIC, presumably for further investment by BCRIC.
Yes, but it still would lower the value of the shares.
No, it becomes additional capital of the company. You're thinking it dilutes the value of the shares. I don't see that, ma'am, but I don't understand that aspect of those things. We'll ask Helliwell that on Tuesday. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack, at this point, I haven't heard anybody ask whether these shares will be paying dividends.
Bennett says hopefully, yes, they'll be paying dividends. All shares are eligible for dividends.
Then if they do pay dividends, they would be subject to reporting on the detailed tax form on your income tax schedule.
Correct.
Make a lot of young Canadians a lot more aware of the prospects of lower income taxes. Am I not correct?
You're correct. That was one of the points that Bennett made yesterday. Encourage a lot of people to be interested in the investment and development of the resources of the province of British Columbia.
I would think so. And in the question that the other gentleman had about buying the shares on time, there's nothing to prevent him from borrowing the money at his credit union or bank and writing off the interest to buy these shares should he so desire, right?
Can you write off the interest as a cost of doing that business?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, please.
Jack.
Yes?
Listen,
Hold on, please. Recognize that voice. It's a pain in the neck. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Jack. Good morning.
Morning.
I'm perfectly willing to take my free share, but I would like Mr. Bennett and his cabinet to know that my vote is not for sale.
Well put, ma'am.
That's all.
Right. Well put, well said. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. I think it's a good idea. If I refer back to the social credit government in Alberta, they brought out a similar thing. I think the Alberta gas came out at $5 a share. Only the residents of Alberta could buy it. And within a year, the stock was $28.
That was the Alberta Energy Corporation, which was sold to residents of Alberta by the Alberta government.
Yes, which was a wonderful thing. And it made every Albertan so interested in his province and so loyal. And it was one of the reasons that Alberta people are so much more positive, I think. So
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going to end this particular examination of this particular development at this time and just remind you some of the basic facts. What Bennett did yesterday was he marched into the press conference and he said, hey, we've got $170 million in assets, between 150 and 170. in the British Columbia Resources Investment Corporation. And I'm going to take these assets, divide them into 15 million shares, keep 20% for the government temporarily, and I'm going to give every eligible resident British Columbia, and I spelled those out here, 5 shares. If they apply before June the 15th, they'll get them by August the 6th. And if you want more, those who apply for the free shares get a discount on shares up to 5,000. We don't know what the trading value of the shares will be. We know what the liquidated value might be on paper. We know that eventually we're told it will trade on the stock exchange, be eligible for dividends. You can keep your shares, you can lock them away, or you can sell them on the market. The political reaction is important, of course, and I'll be dealing with that. But the first effort this morning was to try and get you the basic facts to help you to make your own judgment. Next, a colourful character, if ever there was a colourful character, by the name of Nathan Davinsky. Quick, somebody take this. Somebody take it, quick, take it away. Come on, Freddie, underneath the desk. Away. I do not smoke on television.
Oh, I thought you weren't wearing pants.
Nate,
you just have the jacket and the tie.
What is it you've got there?
Tobacco. Would you like to smell some, or...?
Can I chew a little?
No, it's for the pipe.
When did you last clean out that pipe?
Yesterday afternoon, when it just got chock full of goodies.
Nate Davinsky. I interviewed him when he was a neophyte candidate for GEM for the Vancouver School Board. How many years ago would that be, Nate?
A little over 4 years ago.
I never in my wildest moments did I think that this distinguished academician would become the chairman of all things of the Vancouver School Board. Is that, mind you, as a professor, what are you at UBC?
I'm a professor of mathematics, I'm an assistant dean of science, and now that I'm chairman of the Vancouver School Board, my children are calling me Mao.
Oh, you're chairman of everything.
Precisely.
What's 2 and 2?
Well, you weren't going to put me on the spot and lie.
Can you read and write?
Yes, I can read and write, because I went to the same kind of school that you went to.
I'll tell you, if you split any infinitives this morning, I shall drum you off the air. Now, quite seriously though, you right-wing reactionaries have taken over the Vancouver School Board, endorsed by the Non-Partisan Association. Am I correct in my assumption?
No, that's not correct. We are 7 NPA people. We're individuals. We do not take any party line. We were picked carefully to run in the hope primarily of improving the educational achievement of our sweet little children in Vancouver.
But as chairman of school board, you in fact have very little to do with the educational achievement of your children, do you?
Theoretically, the board can state, we demand higher achievement, tell our officials, who are well-paid and excellent people, to put that into effect.
Okay, let's go down to capers. How much are you cutting out your budget?
My guess is between $1.5 and $2 million.
Oh, I thought it was 2.6.
We're not cutting anything. Look, in 1978, we spent about $111 million.
Mm-hmm.
The proposed budget that was put together in October, November, and December suggested that we increase the $111 million to $120 million.
Who did that? Your officials?
No. This was the Board of School Trustees. Run at that time. I was in a minority position. I voted against the $120 million. What we are suggesting now is that going from 111 to 120 is too big an increase.
So you're going to go from
111 to 117 and a half.
It's not much better.
Well, we don't have enough time. You see, it took 3 months to put this budget of 120 together.
Oh, we're back.
You want me to just go with a big scissors and chop pieces out without carefully thinking about it? I've only got 4 weeks.
That's what the elderly taxpayers and the hard-pressed people who can't afford their taxis want you to do.
They want me to do it intelligently and carefully for the 1980 budget, when our group will be preparing the budget. But I don't want to harm any children. I don't want to hurt any educational program. I don't want to be intellectually irresponsible.
So when we're hearing all this jazz about a $2.5 million cut, the $2.5 million
it's no cut at all.
No, it's a reduction of an increase.
Precisely, and at a time when we're losing 3,000 children.
You gotta be joking.
Oh, no, I'm not joking. Well, look, if you lose some children from a school, you can't just close the school up. You still got to heat it, pay the teacher, and so on and so forth.
You can close the odd school up and...
That's what we're going to study, but you can't just go around the neighborhood and say, well, let's close that one up. I don't like the color. I mean, come on. It's got to be done carefully. The two have to go hand in hand.
Just a minute. I want to get this quite clear. You're down 3,000 kids, and your budget is going to be up $6.5 million.
Right.
How many teachers are you going to chop? None.
No. As a result of shrinking enrollment, we are going to close up about 146 teacher positions.
Attrition.
Attrition, hopefully. It may not cover the whole bag.
You can't fire teachers, anybody.
We're going to probably have to let go some.
I mean, I don't want to go on a mass slaughter of teachers either.
Neither do I.
But the school system is becoming let's not talk about universities.
Let's talk about universities.
First question.
Yes.
I myself am considerably cynical of the feather bedding in the administration of the Vancouver School Board. And I have a mental picture of 30 or 40 highly paid teacher people in the 35 to 40,000 range sitting around in your administrative offices. Is that a false picture?
I believe it is false. The last board in this $120 million budget made serious administrative cuts.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to ask, for example, some of our vice principals to do some teaching again. We are doing away with some positions in head office. We're going to save, over the next few years, about $3.5 million by reducing the administrative structure. But they tell me that compared to other cities of our size, we are very light on administration.
That only means the others are feather-bedded even to a worse extent.
But we're only human. If we're doing better than the next guy, I mean, why are you such a great success?
Because I'm loud like you.
No, because you're better than the next guy. Doesn't mean you're magnificent.
No. It means I've got something to sell.
Ah.
And of course, you're in a non-profit business. You don't have to... Well, I suppose you have. Now, I'm just staggered by your elementary presentation of the situation that you're not cutting a damn thing, you're merely reducing the increase by $2 million.
We're trying to reduce it by $2.5 million.
What are you going to try to reduce? We are no longer talking about cuts. We're talking about less expenditure than previously planned.
Well, look, the $111 million that we spent in %78, we were forced by arbitration beyond our control to increase our salaries by about 7.22%.
Plus the increments.
Yes, so the scales went up 7.22%. No, most of our people are at the top of their scale. We have very highly trained, experienced teachers in Vancouver.
Elderly.
Not necessarily. Intellectually elderly, mature, wise.
So how much did the salary arbitration of 7.22 put up your bill?
I think we spend about 70% of our budget on salaries. So
what are you not going to spend? I mean, you've got whole lists of things.
These are lists for discussion to find out where we can save some money. Now, for example, we send some teachers on what they call sabbatical leaves or long-term leaves.
With pay?
With pay. We want to do away with that.
I certainly hope so.
Now, we want to keep some of the short-term leaves. We might even look at cutting some of that away. But that's the kind of thing we have in mind. That's the $112,000 item.
In the budget was $112,000 for sabbaticals for teachers who only work 10 months a year?
They work very hard.
But they only work 10 months a year.
They are upgrading themselves during the summer, keeping up with the literature. Don't be fooled by that. When a teacher puts a full day in his office, he is working, I think, harder than the average worker downtown.
But you, sir, as an academician yourself, have come to the decision that now is not the time to give teachers paid educational leave.
Precisely. I agree with you.
Out.
Out. Well, nothing is out yet. It will be decided at a February 5th board meeting when the board in its wisdom will make the final decisions. During the next few weeks, we are going to ask the teachers' associations what they think about it. We're going to ask our administrators what they think about it. We're going to ask our officials, and we're going to think about it some more.
Summer school.
What about summer school? That was a possibility of cutting. Now, we've decided we don't want to cut it. It's too important. 5 years ago, we used to charge for it. Some government in Victoria made it illegal for us to charge for
the
summer
NDP.
school. I suspect so. I don't
Are you
remember
going
their
to charge
names.
for summer school?
I am not allowed to charge for summer school.
Do you want to charge
I would
for
like
summer
to
school?
charge for summer
Why
school.
not do it on a means test? Those who can't afford it, pay for it.
The Schools Act, as it sits right now, makes it impossible for me as chairman to charge. I would like to ask Victoria to give us that option.
Who's the Minister of Education now? Still Pat?
I think his name is Pat McGeer.
Well, you see him out when he's cutting up the whales, don't you?
Yes, yes.
Ask him then.
I will ask him, yes.
Nate Davinsky and Webster. I don't often compliment guests, but you're a breath of fresh air. Let's have another breath of fresh air.
Thank you.
Pupil-teacher ratio. That
Yes.
seemed to be the thing that really exploded the educational costs when Eileen Daly said, cut the pupil-teacher ratio. Am I correct?
Yes, that was a real breakthrough in the increase in our costs. Major breakthrough.
What is it now?
Well, the number that we go around talking is 19 to 1.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that for every 19 kids in a class, there's one teacher. That includes all the teachers we hire to do a variety of jobs. In the classroom, where the rubber meets the road, it's about 25 to 1 on the average.
Is that too big or too small?
I think it's certainly not too big. Not at all. It could go a little higher without any educational impact.
Now, but you've got psychological aides, you've got counselors.
That's why it goes from 19 all the way to 25.
Have we overdone it?
I believe we're trying to do too much for our children outside of teaching them educational things. We're trying to treat the whole child, psychologically, emotionally, if they have troubles at home, every conceivable way. We are trying to do everything for everybody. It's very expensive, and it seems to me we might be falling between two stools. We're not teaching them how to read and write. Well enough.
You're laughing.
I'm laughing.
What you're telling me is that all our efforts are being diverted with the new progressive social worker attitude, and we're not teaching the kids. There's a tendency towards
There is
that.
a tendency towards that problem, yes.
You said you were going to make the vice principals, some vice principals teach.
Yes.
Is it a fact that in recent years, under the influence of the teachers and the other school board, that the qualifications, that the numbers needed to have a vice principal were lowered and lowered and lowered to prevent firings?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, if you have 10 teachers in a school area, you have to have a principal. That is part of the Public Schools Act.
I'm talking about the elementary schools where there used to be, I think it was 450 pupils to have a vice principal, and that's now down to about 350.
And we have just moved it back up to 400.
You've moved it back up to 400.
And we're getting a lot of reaction from people, parents, teachers, saying that that was a mistake, that we have to look after our children.
Another of your potential reductions in
Yes.
expenses. We're not talking about cuts anymore.
No. This is a reduction in the increase.
Reduction in increase, not a cut. 128,000 for supervision aides. What do they do?
I'm not absolutely sure. I believe they look after the children at recess, and they help the teacher in general to do his job.
Well, if you take out this 128,000, will that kill the whole supervision aid program or merely reduce some of them?
I believe it'll just remove some of it.
What about Project Build, about which I made a big fuss and you made a big fuss years ago?
Yes.
A vast expenditure of several millions of dollars to teach teachers English.
Well, what it did, ultimately, it's coming to an end in June, is that it produced a whole new curriculum for English language things.
But I thought the provincial government was doing that.
Well, that is my view. The provincial government should have been doing that, and I think they were doing some of it, and if we had waited a bit, we could have used their resources. However, I think what they produced is very good. I still would not have voted for it if we were going to start out again. But what do you do with 6 months to go? Do you kill it after spending a few $1 million? It's not reasonable.
Is that the implementation of report on special needs of children?
No. Build is not on this list. It's on a separate committee. It will be added to the potential savings. We may cut 100 or 200,000 out of Build.
Now I see here, for instance, what is this cutting of this reduction of expenses in the implementation of report on special needs of children? 125,000.
Well, we were going to set up a committee to examine children having problems, and they do have needs, and we would like to do better for them, but that is an administrative sort of thing, and I think we can do without it.
Audiovisual supplies down 25,000. They tell me the schools are jammed with audiovisual supplies.
Let me tell you another.
Is that correct?
I think they are. Let me tell you another story. We now rent IBM memory typewriters for $26,000 a year to teach children in high schools how to use them. Now, we are now informed that IBM will teach anyone to work these machines free of charge. Secondly, if you learn how to use them and don't go to work with them immediately, you will forget what you learned. So why should we spend $26,000 a year on renting memory IBM typewriters?
Is that in here?
It's down here somewhere without a number to it. We've added it to the list, and that's something that we can do without.
Well, don't you do all your business with IBM anyway?
Yes. Well, why should we compete with them? If they're giving free lessons, why should we rent these machines to teach our children to use them?
Sounds like a piece of nonsense. Field trips. I saw something here about field trips. You're going to cut out, not expend $78,000 on more field trips. What does that mean?
Well, we take children to plants, to museums, to places outside the school building. We might rent a bus and take them there. And these are expensive. I don't mind them. I think they're very desirable. What I'm concerned about is that the number of hours these kids are spending in the classroom at the important subjects has gone down below minimum.
Where you're hoist with a petard, not necessarily your own, but a petard, you know what a petard is,
It's some kind of pointed instrument.
No, it's
like
not.
Some people's heads, I know.
I think it's a lanyard of some kind.
What's a lanyard? It's a petard, yes.
Petard, dictionary, please.
Dictionary.
Hoist with a petard.
Hoist with your own petard.
In that I cannot get out of my little peanut brain the fact that although throughout the province the enrollment has only gone down 1% or something, in Vancouver in 1974 you had 75,000 pupils.
That's when we peaked, 75,000.
In 1979 you have 18,000 fewer.
Yes.
But you have more teachers.
That is correct.
That's the cause of your explosion.
We've gone down 18,000 students, and we've kept all the same level, more teachers than we had before.
Who would you hang for that?
Well,
I mean, because that's not even common sense.
If we could afford it, if we were all just bulging with money out of our pockets, why not? It's not a bad thing.
No.
But I think that went too far, and I think Eileen Daly was the one who started us on that track, if I recall correctly.
And also the natural Parkinson's law, whereby work exceeds to fill the maximum time available, even if the actual workload around is down 18,000 pupils.
The interesting thing was I was reading a book the other day about immigration. You see, we have problems with immigration here, ESL and so on, about immigration in New York at the turn of this 1910. And they were having a large flow of immigrants from Eastern Europe, Italians, Jews, the whole works. None of them could speak any English. So they set up special ESL classes in New York in 1910 with a very low student-teacher ratio to look after them of 35 to 1 because their regular classrooms were 50 to 1. And those people were learning very well. And this was a tremendous improvement. Now we are at 19 to 1 in theory, 25 to 1 in the classroom. And I can't help feel that a slightly increased pupil-teacher ratio in the classroom will not hurt us at all in teaching the youngsters. In fact, when you have a larger room with a larger variety of kids, there's a better interaction. There's more discussion. Sometimes if you get it down too small, the whole thing sort of falls like a bad souffle.
That's right. You prefer an audience of a couple of hundred if you're lecturing at UBC.
Yes, I like that, but that doesn't work in high school.
Nathan Davinsky, you're on your own with the phones.
Are you going away? No.
What did you say, petard, as in hoist with your own petard?
I thought it was a sharp instrument like falling on your sword.
I thought it was a lanyard. It's a firework that explodes with a loud report, or, if you'll forgive this crudeness, an expulsion of intestinal gas.
And then what does hoist with your own petard mean? You mean you go up in the air?
Don't overdo it, Nathan. You're not in the academic community of Point Grey now.
No, that's right. That's right. I'm on the other side of Granville.
Seriously, go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Divinsky.
Yes?
It seems to me you mentioned the fact that there is a 19-to-1 ratio between students and teachers. And the fact is, of course, within the school system, it is much higher than that. And the reason it's higher is because of all the counselors, the administrators, et cetera, who drive that rate up. Now, it seems to me your point being is that there are, in fact, too many administrators, there are, in fact, too many counselors, et cetera. Now,
did I say that?
It seems to me that that is a function of the fact that there are so many kids with so many problems that the reason that kids are not doing well today in today's schools is not just a function of the school, it's a function of society being undisciplined and these kids coming into the system being undisciplined. And society is complaining about the educational system because kids don't seem to know very much and are undisciplined. And it doesn't seem to me the function of the school is to discipline kids, and that's what we've been trying to do. The fact is that parents have failed to a large extent in their...
Yes, sociological lecture, the man is right, but you were making the point, as I recall, that we are perhaps educating, perhaps trying to do too much, and that responsibility should go back on society more at large than in the schools in particular.
Well, everybody is to blame. Society, parents, you, me, we're all to blame. But we're only human beings, and we'll do the best we can. What I'm trying to say is that the school board is specially designed and capable to do one particular job. And it seems to me until it does that job well, it should not start branching out too much. There are other problems, of course. But
I saw a special on China last night, and it was really quite fascinating to watch these children being drilled in classroom discipline and in the McGuffey style or the old Scotch school style. Some people are still doing it with some success.
Look, I don't want to go back to the days that you and I went to school, Jack. They were not all that pleasant, and you remember it. There was
bright
the
ones
strap.
survived.
Yes.
And
but
the
why
other ones...
can't we improve the quality without going back to the horrors that we experienced?
Hopefully. Is Williams Lake still there?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Are you there?
Yes.
Well, speak up then.
Oh, can't you hear me?
I'd rather you used the phone than shouted from Williams Lake. No.
Yeah, here I am.
Okay, speak up.
Okay, what I'd like to say is earlier you said that we spend too much time on counseling and everything else, and we should get back down to reading and writing.
Right?
It doesn't take 12 years to learn how to read and write. And I thought that school was for kids to get them trained into going into society. You know, how to live with life, to know what they want to do when they grow older, and how to cope. I'll hang up now, and you tell me your answer.
Thank you.
I think it would be very nice to do it all. But unless you teach them to learn and write, the rest doesn't work well. So first we've got to teach them to learn and write properly. And until we do that, I don't think we should devote too many resources to all the other nice, wonderful things. I think in 12 years, our kids are not... Look at today's Express. Front page story.
Go on.
The children who are coming out of our high schools from British Columbia, this is not just Vancouver, cannot write a proper paragraph. Now, we've got to do something about that. In the complicated world we live in, my goodness, being basically illiterate is a tremendous weight to carry.
Do you know what one of your predecessors, whom I shall not name, as chairman of the Vancouver School Board, told me one day on radio when I said to him, the children can't read or write or spell. What happens to this boy when he grows up and becomes an executive and he can't spell? You know what he said? His secretary will be able to spell.
What school did she go to?
That's exactly what I said. Anyway, the story in the Express this morning, free plug. A basic English composition exam was failed by 44.8% of first-year University of BC students. The Christmas test, 4% more than the previous year. It's unbelievable because you accept very low standards at UBC in English.
Our standards are very high, and those are the ones that have made a financial commitment and a time commitment and have reason to believe they will succeed at university. What about the large group of students who are not going on? Their achievement is probably even lower.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to ask Mr. Divinsky a question.
Yes, please.
I would like to know if he would please go into the point of the professionalism of the teachers in British Columbia or anywhere in this country. to realize that the child goes into the school, and that man may be the best influence on that child's life. Teach him to use his abilities, to use his brain, and most of all to teach him morals and how to get along with other people. Now, all this damn program with Jack Webster, pea-brain that he is, can stress his money. I want to hear about the professionalism, and I'd like that stressed. I don't think they've even touched it. These men and women that teach our children are magnificently educated young people.
Yes.
And they do a super job. And I think it's damn well time Webster got off the money and onto what these professional people and how they influence our life to the best. I know some of the best times of my life were in school, and I'm sure you have one teacher that stands out in your mind that influenced your whole way of life. And I'd like them to get off that money business and get onto the job these teachers do professionally. Please ask Mr. Divinsky to talk about...
I'm with you all the way, but let me try and explain why the money thing is up at the moment. For the last number of years, when we had problems in the Vancouver School Board, the impression was, and it may be an American disease, that we could solve these problems by spending more money, instead of looking at them from an educational, professional point of view. What can we do to improve the quality of education? I don't think money is the answer.
I don't either. And I have two children that went through the Vancouver system, and they came out two fine people. They're both very well educated. They can speak properly. They can read properly. They can write.
Did they have examinations when they went to school?
In fact, one teacher even was... My daughter was injured in school.
Did they have examinations, he asked you?
Yes.
Do you have examinations?
No, we don't.
Now? Thank you, ma'am. 6-8... More with More with Nathan Davinsky. Despite that insult from that woman to me,
I thought it was a compliment.
I think we've done. She called me a pea-brain. I think we've done a service to people this morning in understanding that this reduction you're making is a reduction in proposed expenditures, and there is no question of a cut.
We haven't made one nickel in reduction yet. We're talking about it. We are analyzing it. It's the only intelligent way. We make lists, we consider, we ask.
And do you consult with teachers?
And we are going to consult the teachers Tuesday night.
Go ahead, please.
Jack, I'd first of all like to disagree with your last caller, namely you're not a pea-brain, very obviously.
Thank you.
And secondly, I'd like to disagree with the good doctor in that, in his statement where he said you shouldn't go back to the type of education that you two have had. Obviously, two very successful people, no doubt educated in not only 25 to 1, but probably 40 to 1 in multiple grades.
60 to 1.
And okay, proven successes, as are all of the others.
But what happened to the other? What happened to the guys that weren't so bright in the classroom?
Pardon me?
The guys that weren't so bright went down the road.
No, I think we would have gone farther if they had not had the strap. I found that disgusting and humiliating. The harsh, arbitrary discipline was very unpleasant. The unpainted schoolrooms with the broken windows, they were not very nice.
No,
I don't want to go back to that. We don't have to go back.
The classrooms weren't very nice either.
No.
But nonetheless, it proves that it can be done. And I can only commend you, Doctor, in your stance of increasing the pupil-teacher ratio. And I'd like to further comment on the fact that there are no cuts being made. There are decreases in what is known as a provisional budget being considered.
Beautiful.
If you hear any short report on the subject, you'll think that something vital which has been in the school program for years is being viciously torn apart.
Well, look, some of the 111 million, like the salaries, is going up because we have no control over it due to inflation. Other items in the budget, like audio-visual stuff, is going. Library books are 20% more expensive. So maybe in some theoretical sense, we are looking at real cuts. I mean, let's be completely honest about it. But on the surface, going from 111 to 118 is perfectly reasonable.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Tuesday.
Hello.
What did she call you?
My nickname.
What's that?
Tuesday.
You gotta be joking.
Okay, I knew him when.
Is that Tuesday because of your hair?
No, no, it's a long etymological explanation.
You mean
which you don't want to hear.
Okay, Tuesday, what's your question for Tuesday?
First of all, on Hoist with his own petard,
Yeah.
The line is from Hamlet, and it goes, "It's the engineer hoist with his own petard." The engineer was a person in medieval times who constructed engines or things which were used for war making. The engineer was presumably setting an explosive charge to blow down a wall, and it blew back in his face.
And he was hoisted.
Is that what's going to happen to me on the Vancouver School Board?
It may well be.
No, unfortunately, at the moment, I'm going to school in Montreal. But that's the way it goes. Anyway, would you say at this point that teaching is a no-growth industry?
Absolutely. Our population in the schools is going straight down, and our projection is that in a few years, instead of having 57,000 students, we will have only 45,000 students. The women in Vancouver are not having enough babies.
Well, I'm certainly not going to add to that total. I'm for zero population growth. But I wonder if the people who teach the teachers or the people who counsel people in high school to think about going into the teaching profession are making this point. I'm going into library science, and so far as schools are concerned, librarianship in schools is a no-growth industry.
Correct.
And so I want to see if, I'd like to know if that point is being made in the training of teachers, that they may come out of school and have nowhere to go.
Well, let's be careful about that. They may not have anywhere to go in the Lower Mainland, but as I understand it, just like doctors and dentists and lawyers, there are lots, or there exist positions outside of the Lower Mainland, in British Columbia, in the smaller towns. Now, unfortunately, a lot of our young people don't want to go to the little town.
Yes.
Fair enough, and thanks for your little chat with Tuzi.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't remember me, I'm sure, but tell him Madame Grimaldi says hello.
Oh, yes. we were in musical
So
together.
long.
You were in the music?
Singing and dancing. That's our next show.
It must have been Fiddler on the Roof. When's my break, Fred? 15 seconds now. You've a good exposition, very blunt and clear as usual. I wish you the best, but you're going to have a tough time on school.
I don't want us to get the image that we're just cutting budget. We want to introduce enrichment programs for the gifted. We want to teach composition. We want to have citywide examinations. I love you, Jeff.
Thank you, Nathan Davinsky, Chairman of Vancouver School Board. Just to bring you up to date on a couple of developments in the Simon Fraser strike, you'll remember the other day I interviewed Chris Eve of the Oushie Local Number 2, along with George Stewart. What happened after that day was that the university made a new offer of 6% over 2 years. The Oushie Local voted 183 not to accept it and 167 to accept it. There were 250 members not at the union. At that same meeting, from the floor, it was suggested that it was so close to acceptance that there should be a male referendum. While Mr. Eve talked about true democracy, the male referendum was turned down by a show of hands. Pity about that. That strike's very near settlement. They can't close down Simon Fraser on that vote. Secondly, Mr. Farris, John Farris, is in England, as you know, after the incredible affair of his departure from his top position in law in British Columbia. I told you this morning, and just for your information I repeat it, he has applied for readmission to the bar in British Columbia as a practicing solicitor. That application is now in the hands of the Credentials Committee of the Law Society. It will go from there to the benchers, who will decide perhaps on the 26th of January whether the former Chief Justice of the BC, who fled in the face of a simple allegation, will come back to practice law as an ordinary barrister solicitor in British Columbia, just to keep you up to date. Linda, Monday.
Monday, Arthur Haley.
The Arthur Haley. Should be good fun.
Hotel, airport, etc.
Everything else. And of course, Tuesday morning we're going to have David Hallowell of BCRIC to give us more of the gen on the social credit dividend. I suppose that's one way to regard it. It's been a busy week, it's been a good week. I've been dying with a cold, I'm over it out. See you Monday morning, 9 a.m.